Have you ever been told by your own mother that your presence at a family dinner would ruin the evening? Not because of something you said, not because of something you did, but because of what you do for a living. 5 days before Christmas, my mother called me with the kind of voice she reserves for disappointments. Calm on the surface, cold underneath. Renata is bringing Elliot home to meet everyone. She doesn't want you there, Nora. Your teaching job would embarrass her in front of him. I said 2 words, I understand, and I hung up. What my family didn't know was that for the past 2 years, I had been quietly managing an $18 million trust fund. The same trust fund my perfect sister was counting on to pay for her dream wedding, her designer apartment, and the version of herself she'd been performing for Elliot Mercer's benefit. When they figured it out 5 days later and showed up at my door in a panic, the conversation we had was nothing like any conversation we'd ever had before. My name is Nora Callahan. I'm 33 years old, and this is that story. If you're watching this, welcome to Whispers of Wisdom. Drop a comment and tell me where in the world you're watching from. I read every single one. The call came on a Tuesday evening in December at around 6:30. I was sitting at my kitchen table grading papers on the economic causes of World War I. Jordan Abrams, one of my sharpest junior students, had written a genuinely impressive analysis about the relationship between industrial inequality and the collapse of European alliances. I'd just written exceptional thinking in the margin when my phone lit up. Mom. I almost let it ring. After 20 years of being a Callahan daughter, I'd learned that phone calls from Sylvia Callahan after 6 o'clock rarely brought good news. I answered anyway. Nora, she said, using that particular tone, warm enough to seem kind, tight enough to telegraph control. I need to talk to you about Christmas. I set down my red pen. What about it? A pause. The kind of pause that has weight behind it. Renata is bringing Elliot home this year. You know how significant this is for her. Elliot Mercer. I'd heard that name approximately 300 times in the past 4 months. Founder and CEO of Mercer Capital Partners, a private equity firm managing somewhere in the range of $600 million in assets. Self-made, according to the profile in the financial press. Educated at Georgetown. The kind of man Renata had been angling toward her entire adult life. That's wonderful, I said, and I meant it. My relationship with Renata was complicated, but her happiness wasn't something I rooted against. Renata feels, and I agree with her, that it might be better if you weren't there this year. The words hit the way cold water hits your face when you're not expecting it. Startling. Immediate. Clarifying. I'm sorry. It's nothing personal, sweetheart. Elliot comes from a very specific world. Finance. Investment. High net worth circles. And she searched for the word. I waited. We both knew she'd already found it. Your career might give the wrong impression. My career. I'd spent 6 years earning my undergraduate degree while working evenings at a hotel front desk. I'd taken out $30,000 in student loans to complete my master's in education. I'd spent the last 11 years in classrooms, department meetings, after-school tutoring sessions, and curriculum nights. I'd earned a certification in advanced educational leadership 18 months ago at my own expense. My career was not something that had happened to me. Mom, I have a master's degree. I've been teaching for 11 years. Exactly. Her tone shifted, as if I'd just made her point for her. 11 years and you're still making what, 50-something thousand a year? 62. Renata is a senior brand strategist now. She works with investors, with executives. Elliot needs to see that this family exists in a certain register. I finished quietly. I was going to say world. I thought about the previous Christmas. The way Sylvia had introduced me to the Mercer family. Friends visiting from Connecticut. This is Nora. She teaches. Pause. Renata, of course, is in corporate branding. The shift in her voice from flat description to genuine pride had been subtle. Enough to look accidental. It wasn't. I thought about the email she'd sent 3 months ago asking me to contribute $2,500 to Renata's birthday celebration at a rooftop venue. Since you don't have a family of your own to support, I assumed you'd be able to chip in a bit more than the others. I'd transferred the money that afternoon without a word. I could come after dinner, I offered. Just for an hour. Say hello, meet Elliot. Renata was very clear. Sylvia's voice sharpened. She doesn't want you there at all. Please don't. Make this harder for me than it already is. Don't make this harder for me. As though I were the one doing something to her. I understand, I said. Those 2 words again. The ones I'd been saying my whole life. I understand when she forgot to mention my department chair promotion at dinner. I understand when my name was removed from the family Christmas card because the photographer charged extra. I understand when I wasn't included in Renata's bridal party planning meeting because it would be awkward given your style preferences. I understand. The 2 most expensive words I'd ever learned. I knew you'd be reasonable, Sylvia said. Relief in her voice. The relief of someone who got what she wanted. You always are. We said goodbye. I set the phone face down on the table. For a long moment, I sat in the silence of my apartment, a 1-bedroom in a mid-rise building. Outside the city that I'd shared with no one but my houseplant and a growing collection of history books for 8 years. The lamp over my papers cast a warm circle of light. Jordan Abrams' essay was still open in front of me, the words exceptional thinking glowing in red ink. Then I opened my laptop. There was a folder I hadn't looked at in weeks. I'd labeled it simply, Grandma Frances. Inside was an unread email from Dr. Vivian Hartley of Hartley and Stone Associates, dated the 3rd of December. Subject line, Annual Trust Review, Frances Callahan Irrevocable Trust. I'd been putting it off. The questions it raised were questions I hadn't been ready to answer. I closed the laptop again. But that night, for the first time in a long time, I didn't cry when I went to bed. I felt something else. A stillness where my patience used to be. And somewhere deep inside that stillness, something was beginning to move. By Wednesday morning. The weight of Tuesday's phone call had settled into something useful. Calculation. I stood in front of my 3rd period class explaining the long-term effects of the Great Depression. Talking about breadlines and bank failures and what happens when systems that people trust completely collapse overnight, and underneath every word, I was running the math on my own situation. If I accepted this exclusion quietly, what came next? Easter, Elliot's parents are visiting. Nora, it might be best if. Renata's wedding, it's a very small ceremony, very curated. And onward. Birthdays. Anniversaries. My parents' retirement milestones. All of it happening in rooms I'd been quietly ushered out of. I'd become a ghost in my own family history. And then there was the financial dimension. My mother had already established a pattern of treating my income as a communal resource. The $2,500 for Renata's birthday. The $1,800 I'd contributed to my father's boat repair 2 years ago, never repaid, never acknowledged. The quiet but persistent implication that because I was unmarried and childless, my savings belonged to whoever asked for them next. If I stayed silent, the requests would only grow larger. Ms. Callahan. Jordan Abrams, front row, watching me with that particular look she had, sharp, slightly impatient with vagueness. You okay? You've been staring at the map for like a minute and a half. Just thinking about how history tends to repeat itself when people stop paying attention, I said. She tilted her head. That sounds like more than a history observation. It usually is, I told her. That evening I opened the email from Dr. Vivian Hartley. Dear Ms. Callahan, as per our scheduled annual review, the Francis Callahan Irrevocable Trust. Currently holds assets valued at $18,342,611. As sole trustee, you retain full discretionary authority over distributions pursuant to Section 5.1 of the trust instrument. Please confirm your distribution intentions for the upcoming fiscal year by December 15th. Modifications to distribution conditions must be documented before the fiscal deadline. I am available at your convenience. Warm regards, Dr. Vivian Hartley, Hartley and Stone Associates. $18,342,611. Renata was the sole beneficiary. I was the sole trustee. The one person who controlled when, how, and under what conditions that money ever reached her hands. My grandmother Frances had made that arrangement on purpose. She'd told me during one of our last visits, sitting at her kitchen table drinking tea from mismatched cups, with the particular calm of someone who has lived long enough to see patterns clearly. Renata isn't cruel, Nora. She's just never been asked to earn anything. I want you to change that. Not with punishment, with patience. And with the kind of love that sometimes says no. I had kept this secret for 2 years. I hadn't told Renata. Hadn't told my parents. Hadn't told anyone except Dana Osei, my closest colleague, over coffee one rainy Friday when I needed to say it out loud just once to make sure it was real. Partly I stayed silent because I didn't want my family's relationship with me to be about what I held rather than who I was. Partly because I wasn't ready to use it. But sitting in my apartment on Wednesday night with Sylvia Callahan's words still ringing in my ears, your teaching job would embarrass her, I began to reconsider what staying silent actually cost me. Not revenge. I want to be clear about that. I didn't want to punish my sister. I didn't want to destroy anything. But there's a difference between cruelty and accountability. Between silence and complicity in your own erasure. I closed the laptop and looked out the window at the city below. The key had been in my pocket for 2 years. I was beginning to think about what door it was meant to open. Christmas Day arrived gray and quiet. I woke at 6:30 out of habit. 11 years of early mornings don't reset for holidays. I made coffee, wrapped myself in a blanket, watched snow fall on the street below and tried, with limited success, not to think about the gathering happening across the city without me. By noon I'd marked 27 essays. By 3 I'd rearranged my bookshelves by decade and geographic region. By 5 I'd accepted that productivity was not going to fill the particular shape of this absence. I made myself dinner. A ready-made roast from the supermarket, reheated. Vegetables from a bag. A bread roll I'd forgotten to warm. I ate standing at my kitchen counter because sitting at the table alone felt like a formal acknowledgement of something I wasn't ready to name. At 9:14, my phone lit up with a message from Renata. A photo attached. Thanks for being understanding, sis. Elliot said the family feels really cohesive and warm. He loved it. Merry Christmas, Christmas tree. The photo showed my entire family arranged around my parents' dining table, the mahogany one that had been in that house since I was 7, the one my grandmother Frances had passed down to them. Sylvia in burgundy, Gerald looking slightly stiff in a button-down, and Renata glowing beside a tall, broad-shouldered man with close-cropped dark hair. Elliot Mercer, I assumed. For place settings. No empty chair where I might have been, because no one had ever considered putting one there. The family feels really cohesive and warm. I set the phone down, then picked it up and looked at the photo again. On the side table in the background, just visible past Gerald's shoulder, sat a silver tea service I recognized immediately. My grandmother's. The one she had promised to me during one of her last visits, the one I was the only grandchild who had ever helped her polish. My mother had kept it, of course. At 9:47, A separate message arrived from Gerald. Nora, I'm sorry about tonight. Your mother thought it was best. I love you. I stared at that for a long time. Gerald Callahan, 66 years old, retired civil engineer, lifelong bystander to his wife's decisions. He had never once stepped in front of one of those decisions to redirect it. Not once in 33 years. But he always said he loved me. As if love without presence meant anything at all. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Dana Osei. Tell me you're not alone in your apartment on Christmas, she said immediately. I'm alone in my apartment on Christmas. Nora. I know. You invited me. I needed the quiet. You needed to process. Yes. Process what? Your family being awful? That's not new information. I told her about the photo, about the tea service, about Renata's message, cohesive and warm. Dana was quiet for a moment. When are you going to stop letting them do this to you? I don't let them. It just. You do, she said, not harsh, just honest. You pay for their parties. You show up when they need. You explain away treatment that no one should have to explain away. And they keep taking. Because you keep making it easy. What am I supposed to do with it? A pause. You have a choice you haven't made yet, Dana said. And I think you already know what it is. After we said goodnight, I sat with the trust document open on my screen for a long time. Section 5.1. The trustee shall retain sole and complete discretion to determine the timing, manner, and conditions of any distributions to the beneficiary. Sole and complete discretion. I thought about my grandmother Frances at her kitchen table, about the mismatched teacups, and her unhurried voice. You're not powerless, Nora. You never were. You've just been choosing not to use what you have. I closed the laptop. I wasn't ready to decide anything that night, but for the first time in 2 years, I was ready to stop. Pretending the choice didn't exist, December 26th. I called Dr. Vivian Hartley's office at 9 in the morning. Ms. Callahan, she said, with the measured ease of someone who has guided 100 families through the intersection of grief and wealth. I had a feeling I'd be hearing from you. The fiscal deadline is the 15th. I know. I'd like to come in today if that's possible. A brief pause. I can make 2 o'clock work. Her office was in a converted Victorian townhouse, high ceilings, wood floors worn smooth. With age, the smell of old paper and good coffee. Dr. Vivian Hartley was 61 silver-haired and possessed the kind of still authority that made you feel certain things would be handled correctly even when everything felt uncertain. She had been my grandmother's attorney for almost 25 years. She handed me a coffee and spread the trust instrument across her desk without ceremony. Let's walk through the fundamentals again. Your grandmother established the Frances Callahan irrevocable trust in April 2022, roughly 9 months before her death. The trust holds a portfolio of publicly traded equities, municipal bonds, and a residential investment property in the north end of the city, collectively valued at just over $18 million. Renata is the sole beneficiary. You are the sole trustee. She tapped Section 5.1, highlighted in yellow. This grants you broader authority than most trustees receive. Frances was very deliberate about this language. She wanted you to have genuine discretion, not a rubber stamp. She told me she wanted Renata to learn the value of something before she received the gift of it. Dr. Hartley nodded slowly. She said nearly the same thing to me. She told me, and I'm quoting as accurately as I can, Renata has been given everything she ever asked for. What I want Nora to give her is the thing she's never been asked for, which is accountability. I looked down at the 49 pages of legal language in front of me and felt something shift in my chest. My grandmother's trust in me encoded in every clause. What are my options for the annual distribution? Dr. Hartley pulled a separate summary sheet from a folder. Several. You can authorize a standard distribution. Renata is currently eligible for up to $220,000 in the current fiscal year. You can defer distribution to the following year, citing beneficiary readiness as grounds. You can attach conditions, educational requirements, financial literacy certification, employment documentation, or you can modify the distribution schedule entirely, spacing it out over multiple years tied to demonstrated benchmarks. If Renata chooses to contest any of these decisions, she can petition the court, but your grandmother's language is robust. Absent bad faith or breach of fiduciary duty on your part, your discretion is effectively unchallengeable. She made sure of that. She spent considerable money making sure of that, yes. I was quiet for a moment. There's one other matter, Dr. Hartley said. She passed me a small envelope, heavy cream paper, formal. Your grandmother left you a personal bequest of $60,000 separate from the trust and unrestricted. You've been drawing from it in charitable donations, I believe. The Alderton Winter Foundation Gala. I've contributed for the past 2 years. Yes, I saw those records. You're listed as a founding donor in their annual report. She handed me a card from inside the envelope. Embossed lettering. Gold text. Nora Callahan, founding donor. Your invitation to this year's gala arrived last week. It's tomorrow evening. Grand ballroom at the Alderton Hotel. 500 guests. I turned the card over in my hands. I didn't realize the timing, I said. Dr. Hartley's expression remained composed, but something moved briefly in her eyes. Life does occasionally arrange things with a certain elegance, Miss Callahan. I looked at the badge. For 2 years I'd attended the gala quietly, arriving late, giving my donation, leaving before anyone asked too many questions. I hadn't wanted my family to know I had this part of my life. I hadn't wanted it weaponized or monetized or used as a measuring stick by people who measured everything. But they thought I was an embarrassment. They'd said so plainly. And tomorrow night I would walk into the same room as my sister and her wealthy boyfriend wearing a badge that couldn't be bought at the door. Dr. Hartley, I'd like to schedule a follow-up meeting on the 15th. I think I'll have more clarity by then. She smiled, the first real one of the afternoon. I think you will too. I stepped out into the December cold with the founding donor card tucked carefully into my coat pocket. For the first time in longer than I could easily remember, I didn't feel like someone who had to ask permission to walk into a room. The doorbell rang at 4:41 p.m. on December 26th. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and felt the air go out of the room. Sylvia Callahan stood in the corridor, flanked by Renata and my father. Sylvia's expression was the one she used when she needed something urgently but intended to appear as though she was simply visiting. Renata looked agitated. Gerald stood slightly behind both of them in the posture I recognized from every difficult conversation of my childhood, present but positioned for plausible deniability. I opened the door. Nora. My mother moved past me before I'd had a chance to offer entrance. We need to discuss Grandma Frances's trust. The words hit like ice water. How did you find out? Elliot's firm ran a standard background review on our family, Renata said, following her in. Due diligence. They do it with everyone he's seriously involved with. Imagine my surprise when his analyst flagged an $18 million trust fund in my name that I've apparently never been informed about. She said this with the tone of someone who had been wronged, as if the secret were the offense, rather than what had necessitated keeping it. Gerald entered last, closing the door quietly behind him. He said nothing. You're the trustee, Renata continued. You, a teacher. You've been sitting on $18 million of my money for 2 years without telling me. It's not your money until I release it. That's what a trust is. That cannot be what Grandma intended. Renata's voice rose. she wouldn't have put you in charge of something this significant. She would, and she did. The trust was executed by a licensed attorney, witnessed, notarized. Frances was assessed by 2 independent physicians who certified her full mental competency at the time of signing. My mother raised a hand, quieting Renata with practiced efficiency. 30 years of managing social situations had given Sylvia Callahan excellent instincts for when bluntness would backfire. Nora, sweetheart. Her voice shifted into the register she used when she wanted something. Estate arrangements are complicated. We're family. These things should be handled together. She produced a folder from her bag. Transferring the trustee role to me. It's the most sensible arrangement. I have experience. Managing finances, I'm family. No. The word fell into the room cleanly. Sylvia blinked. I'm sorry. No. I won't be signing that. Nora, be reasonable. I am being completely reasonable. I kept my voice level. 11 years of managing classrooms of teenagers had given me a considerable ability to remain calm while things escalated around me. Grandma Frances chose me. She consulted legal professionals. She made her wishes explicit. The trust is valid and I am the trustee. Renata stepped forward. Her face had gone from pale to pink. You don't know anything about managing money at this scale. You ride public transit. You pack your own lunch. You teach 17-year-olds about ancient history. I teach modern history, but I understand why the distinction isn't important to you. Don't be clever. And you work in brand strategy for a firm that hired you because of who you're dating, not because of your interview performance. I know about that process, Renata. Or the absence of one. She went very still. That's not. I'm not saying it to be cruel. I'm saying it because we're apparently having an honest conversation now, and I'd like it to actually be honest. My mother's voice sharpened. Nora. This money is for Renata's future. Her security. Her wedding. Do you want to stand in the way of your sister's happiness because of some petty grievance? I'm not standing in the way of anything. I'm doing exactly what Grandma Frances asked me to do. And what is that exactly? Making sure the money is used responsibly and that the person receiving it is ready to receive it. Silence. Renata broke it first. You're punishing me. I haven't done anything yet. You've been sitting on this for 2 years. You've been watching me plan my life without telling me. I was protecting you from yourself, the same way Grandma Frances asked me to. I don't need protecting. Then proving that should be straightforward. Renata stared at me. Something moved across her face that I didn't fully recognize. Surprise. Maybe. She wasn't accustomed to me pushing back. You need to leave, I said. I'll be attending the Alderton Foundation Gala tomorrow evening. If you'd like to continue this conversation in a setting that isn't my front hallway, we can do it there. Renata laughed, sharp, dismissive. You weren't invited to the gala. I reached into my coat pocket, where I'd left the card after returning from Dr. Hartley's office. Gold letters on cream stock. Nora Callahan, founding donor. I watched the laughter leave Renata's face in real time. I've contributed $60,000 over the past 2 years. The foundation sends me a VIP invitation every December. Renata took the card from my hand before I'd offered it, staring at it as if the letters might rearrange themselves into something more manageable. Where did you? Grandma Frances left me a personal bequest, separate from the trust. She believed in the foundation's work. I've been honoring her. My mother's composure, which had taken 64 years to construct, cracked for the second time in 2 days. Gerald, still standing near the door, looked at me with an expression I didn't have a name for. Not quite pride. Not quite shame. Something that existed in the space between them. We'll speak tomorrow, Sylvia said finally. We will. I opened the door and held it. They filed out, Sylvia first, Renata last, shooting me a look I'd received variations of my entire life. Gerald paused as he passed, started to speak, thought better of it, nodded once, and followed the others. I closed the door and stood alone in my apartment. My hands were trembling, but not with fear. Tomorrow night I would walk into a ballroom that my family considered their territory, wearing credentials they hadn't known existed. And for the first time in my life, they would have to adjust their picture of me rather than the other way around. The Alderton Winter Foundation Gala occupied the grand ballroom of the Alderton Hotel on the evening of December 27th. Crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, 500 guests in tailored evening wear engaged in the graceful performance of philanthropy over drinks. The minimum donation for attendance was $2,500 per ticket. The ambient conversation hummed with a mixture of genuine generosity and social positioning that characterizes events of this kind. I arrived at 7:20. A $198 black dress I'd bought 18 months ago and never had occasion to wear. The founding donor badge pinned to my left shoulder. The VIP entrance was separate from the general admission doors. A staff coordinator checked my name, broke into a warm smile, and directed me toward the reception near the main stage. "Ms. Callahan, thank you so much for your continued support. The board specifically wanted me to convey their gratitude. Your contributions have been central to our education outreach program." "It was my grandmother's passion," I said. "I'm honoring her." I accepted a glass of sparkling water and moved through the room. Foundation staff members recognized me from donor briefings. A board member I'd exchanged emails with asked whether I'd considered the advisory committee invitation. For 2 years I had come to these evenings quietly, staying on the margins, leaving early. Tonight, I let myself exist in the center of the room. At 7:38, I saw them. Sylvia in deep green. Gerald with the particular stiffness of a man wearing a rented tuxedo. And Renata, luminous in a silver gown that had clearly been purchased at a price no one mentioned. Standing beside a tall man with composed, intelligent features, Elliot Mercer. They hadn't spotted me yet. I stayed near the stage, talking with a foundation board member about an education grant proposal we were developing for underserved secondary schools. The conversation felt genuinely meaningful. The fact that my family was 30 meters away performing social confidence for an audience that didn't know the backstory felt, somehow, entirely manageable. At 7:52, Elliot noticed my badge. I watched the moment with a kind of detached clarity. He was doing what successful people do in rooms like this, reading the room, clocking the major donors, identifying the nodes of actual influence beneath the surface of social performance. His gaze moved across the badge on my shoulder and he stopped. He said something quietly to Renata. She looked in my direction and went pale. But Elliot was already moving toward me, drawing her gently by the elbow with the practiced ease of a man who had been raised to acknowledge the people who built the room. "Excuse me." He extended his hand with the natural confidence of a man who introduced himself easily. "I'm Elliot Mercer. I don't believe we've met, but I wanted to personally thank you for your commitment to the foundation. The work being done in the education initiative is extraordinary, and founding donors like yourself are the reason it exists." Up close, he was more thoughtful than I'd expected. His eyes were attentive. His handshake was genuine. "Elliot," I said. "I'm Nora Callahan." The name registered. I watched it move across his face, the slight widening, the quick calibration. "Callahan," he repeated slowly. "As in Renata's older sister?" "Yes." He turned to Renata. Her face had traveled past pale into something approaching unreadable. "You told me you didn't recognize the founding donor." The lighting is different over here, Your sister has donated $60,000 to a foundation I've personally supported for 3 years, and you told me you didn't know her. Other guests nearby were beginning to redirect their attention. The shift in atmosphere had the particular magnetism of a social situation developing unexpectedly at a formal event. Sylvia materialized at Renata's side with the efficient instinct of someone who had managed social situations for decades. Elliot, what a wonderful evening. Have you seen the live auction items? There's a piece by Mrs. Callahan. Elliot's voice was pleasant in the way that sharp things sometimes are before you realize they've cut you. I was just thanking your daughter for her charitable contributions. I understand she's been a founding donor here for several years. Yes, well, Sylvia trailed off. I understood from Renata that the family was attending tonight as a group. I didn't realize she had a sister who was already a recognized figure in this community. Nora is Sylvia began. A founding donor, Elliot said, which in practice means she has contributed more to this foundation than roughly a third of the ticketed guests tonight. He turned to me. I apologize that I was given an incomplete picture of your family before tonight. That isn't something I'm comfortable with. You had no way of knowing. No, but Renata did. A new voice entered the conversation, measured, authoritative, completely unruffled. Miss Callahan. What a pleasant surprise. Dr. Vivian Hartley crossed toward us in a midnight blue gown, silver hair arranged with elegant precision. She nodded to Elliot with the ease of someone accustomed to moving through these circles. Mr. Mercer, always good to see you. I didn't know you were acquainted with my client. Your client? Elliot looked between us. Miss Callahan manages a substantial trust on behalf of her family. She's been one of my most conscientious clients. Dr. Hartley turned to Sylvia with a polished smile. Your mother-in-law chose very wisely, Mrs. Callahan. The Francis Callahan Trust is in excellent hands. The temperature around our small cluster dropped by several degrees. Nora manages the trust, Elliot said slowly. He was looking at Renata now with the steady attention of a man who has made a career of identifying discrepancies between what he's been told and what is actually true. You told me the estate was being handled by a third-party administrator. I thought, Renata's voice caught. I didn't know the details. You knew there was a trust. We discussed it. You specifically told me the financial matters were being handled independently. Renata. Elliot's voice, still quiet, had lost its warmth. What else have you told me that isn't accurate? I had watched my sister search for words, for framing, for the particular kind of spin that had served her through a lifetime of managed impressions. In this room, with this audience, with the truth already visible from 3 directions, she found nothing. I think I said quietly that you two have things to discuss privately. I turned to walk away. Elliot's voice stopped me. Miss Callahan. I looked back. His expression had changed, the smooth confidence had cracked, and what was underneath it was more interesting, more real. I apologize for whatever role I've inadvertently played in what appears to be a longer and more complicated situation. I hope that at some point, if you're willing, we might have a proper conversation. That's possible, I said. I walked toward the far side of the ballroom. My heart was steady. My hands were still. Around me, 500 people carried on with the business of being wealthy and generous and socially visible, and I felt, for the first time in longer than I could clearly remember, that I belonged in the room I was standing in. Not because of the badge on my shoulder. Because I had finally stopped apologizing for being there. I found Dr. Hartley near the silent auction tables, examining a bronze sculpture of intersecting geometric forms with the calm appraisal of someone who has seen a great deal of art over a long life. More dramatic than anticipated, she said without looking up. I didn't engineer it. The most significant moments rarely are engineered. She turned. I have distribution documents prepared in my office. After tonight, Do you have a clearer sense of what you want to do? I thought about my grandmother's mismatched teacups, about the photo from Christmas with for place settings and no empty chair, about Renata's face when Elliot realized the woman he was looking at hadn't been described to him honestly. I want to defer distribution for 12 months, I said, on the grounds of beneficiary readiness. I'm invoking Section 5.1 explicitly, and I want to attach a condition, a certified financial literacy program at an accredited institution, completed before any funds are released. Dr. Hartley produced a notepad from her evening bag. That's well within your authority. What else? I want to inform Elliot Mercer of the trust's full structure, not to influence his decisions about Renata. That's his private matter. But because he deserves to have accurate information before making major commitments. Also appropriate. Transparency rarely harms honest people. And I'm not transferring the trustee role to anyone. My grandmother placed this responsibility with me, and I intend to honor it. I'll have the documentation prepared for the 15th, Dr. Hartley said. The deferral is effective upon filing. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't fully categorize. Frances said something to me once that I don't think I've shared with you before. She said, Nora isn't the one who needs the trust. She's the one who makes it trustworthy. I think tonight illustrated exactly what she meant. Before I could respond, footsteps crossed toward us. Renata alone, the silver gown slightly diminished now by the tension in her posture. I hope you're satisfied. Low voice, controlled fury. Elliot wants to reconsider the timeline for everything. Because of you. Because of choices you made, I said. I was simply standing in the room when they became visible. You planned this. I came to an event I've attended for 2 years because I was invited. Everything else followed. From truth, not planning. You ruined what I was building. I corrected a misrepresentation. What you build from here is entirely up to you. She stared at me, something shifting in her expression, the anger still present, but something else beneath it now. Something younger. Less certain. You're setting conditions on my own inheritance. I'm doing what Grandma Frances asked me to do. She wanted you to be ready when you received this. She loved you, Renata. She just loved you in the direction of growth rather than comfort. I already deserve it. Then proving it should take 12 months at most. A long pause. I genuinely hate you right now. I know. My job isn't to be liked by you. It's to honor our grandmother's wishes. I'm going to do that. Regardless. She turned and walked away without another word. My mother found me 3 minutes later. Nora. Diplomatic register. Controlled. You've gone further than was necessary. Have I? You called me 5 days before Christmas to tell me my presence at a family dinner would embarrass my sister. I'd be interested in understanding where you think the line falls. No answer. Mom. I kept my voice quiet, not combative. I didn't come tonight to start a war. I came because I was invited. Everything that happened because of untruths your household chose to tell and keep. I've been managing this trust for 2 years. I attended this gala for 2 years. I've been contributing to Grandma Frances's causes for 2 years, and none of it was visible to you. Because it didn't fit the version of me you'd decided to see. What do you want from this family? The question stopped me. Not because it was unexpected, but because for the first time it sounded like she actually wanted to know. I want to belong to this family as I am. Not as an edited version. Not when it's financially convenient. Not when you need something. As I am, for who I actually am. Gerald appeared at the edge of our conversation, as he always did, present at the margins of things. Sylvia. His voice was quiet, but deliberate. She's right. Both of us turned. She has been right for a long time, he said. And I have never said so. That's on me. He met my eyes. I'm proud of you, Nora. I should have said that plainly years ago. I'm saying it now. I didn't trust my voice, so I nodded. Sylvia looked between us, recalibrating in real time. Whatever architecture of family dynamics she had spent 30 years constructing was shifting in ways she hadn't anticipated and couldn't control. "This isn't the place," she said finally, taking Gerald's arm. "No," I agreed. "It isn't." I left the gala at 11:15, stepping into cold December air with my badge still on my shoulder. The doorman called me by name. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. The fallout unfolded over the following 10 days with the quiet inevitability of things that have been suppressed too long finally releasing. Elliot and Renata did not break their engagement formally, but he requested time. Space to think. The indefinite pause of two people reassessing what they actually know about each other. Word spread through their shared social network with the efficiency of news among people who pay close attention. Renata's position at Mercer Capital Partners became untenable by the new year. She wasn't dismissed. Elliot was far too composed for that, but she was gently encouraged to explore opportunities aligned with her longer-term professional development. She cleared her desk on January 4th. My mother received phone calls from her social circle throughout the final week of December. Friends from her charity board, neighbors, the long-established network of women she'd cultivated for 3 decades, all expressing concern in the particular way that people do when they're also gathering information. "The story is all over the circuit," Dana told me over coffee in the first week of January. "I've heard 4 versions of it. A sister band from Christmas dinner. A trust fund. A charity gala. The details shift, but the shape is the same." "What shape?" "The one where the person everyone underestimated turns out to be the most interesting one in the room." On December 31st, I signed the deferral documents at Dr. Hartley's office. Clean legal language. Distributions from the Francis Callahan Irrevocable Trust to beneficiary Renata Callahan. Suspended for 12 months, contingent on completion of a certified personal financial management program from an accredited institution. Standard fiduciary practice. Unremarkable to anyone reviewing it from the outside. Everything it meant to us was internal. "Your grandmother would have done precisely this," Dr. Hartley said as she notarized the final page. "Not as punishment, as investment." On January 2nd, an email arrived from Gerald. 4 pages. The longest written communication I'd received from my father in my entire life. He apologized for decades of silence. He named specific moments when he had seen me treated poorly and said nothing. He did not make excuses. He did not ask for immediate forgiveness. He said he wanted to try if I was willing to let him. I read it 4 times and filed it in a folder I labeled New Beginnings. On January 6th, Renata texted me. "Fine. I'll take the course. Don't expect me to be happy about it." I replied, "I don't need you to be happy. I need you to do the work. You can do this, Renata." Grandma Frances knew that. So do I. She didn't respond. But Dr. Hartley confirmed her enrollment 3 days later. Introduction to Personal Financial Management. 12 weeks. Certified program. Starting February 3rd. The first step. On January 10th, the Alderton Foundation Board sent an email extending me an invitation to join their advisory council, citing my commitment to education equity work and my perspective as a working educator. I accepted on January 12th. By mid-January, I had restructured my sense of what a winter evening could look like. On a Thursday in the 3rd week of the month, 6 people sat around the table in my apartment, which I'd moved away from the wall and into the center of the room, where it had always been meant to be. Dana brought wine. 2 colleagues from the school brought dessert. My father came alone, holding a bottle of good olive oil and wearing an expression I hadn't seen on him before: open, careful, genuinely trying. It was the first time a member of my family had ever come to my home. "It's you," Gerald said, looking around at the books and maps and accumulated objects of a life. "Lived on my own terms. This place is entirely you." "Yes," I said. "It is." The evening was imperfect and genuine and warm in the way that dinners among people who choose each other tend to be. Dana told stories about our first year of teaching that made everyone laugh, including Gerald. My colleagues argued good-naturedly about history. Methodology. My father listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, he was thoughtful and present in a way I hadn't expected. At some point, he caught my eye across the table and mouthed, "Thank you." I nodded. We were both learning what this could look like, a relationship built on honesty instead of managed distances. At 8:30, Renata texted, "The course started yesterday. It's harder than I expected. Tell me that matters." I showed it to Gerald. He read it twice. "She means that," he said quietly. "She's not used to things being hard. But she's trying." I typed back, "It matters. Keep going." 3 words. Not warmth, not absolution, but acknowledgement. A door left slightly open for the work still to come. There is a thing that happens when you spend long enough being treated as invisible. You start to mistake the treatment for truth. You start to believe that if the people who are supposed to see you most clearly see only your salary and your title and the dress you bought on clearance, then perhaps that is the complete picture. Perhaps you really are only those things. My grandmother Frances never believed that. She saw something in me that I had spent years having educated out of my own self-perception. She gave me a key not because she wanted to empower me over my sister, but because she trusted that when the moment came, I would use it carefully. She was right that the moment would come. She was patient enough not to specify when. What I know now, on the other side of that December, is this. Boundaries are not punishments. They are the shape that self-respect takes when you finally stop pretending it doesn't matter. Saying no to treatment that diminishes you is not cruelty. It is accuracy. You can love people completely, genuinely, with full knowledge of their complications and still refuse to be made small by them. The work of repairing something that has been broken for decades is not the work of a single conversation at a charity gala. It is slow. It is uncertain. It proceeds in texts that arrive late in the evening and emails that take 4 drafts to send. My father and I have dinner once a month now. It is still awkward, the way new things are. We are both relearning how to be in a room together without the old scripts. My mother has called twice. I have answered once. The conversation was short and careful too. People choosing their words with a precision they should have been using for 30 years. I don't know what will grow from it. I'm choosing not to predict. Renata completed the first month of her financial management course. According to Gerald, she finds it harder than anything she's been asked to do before. I think that is the point. I think Frances knew it would be. In 11 months, I will review the trust again with Dr. Hartley. By then, Renata will have completed the program. We will sit across from each other and have a conversation about money and readiness and what our grandmother actually wanted for both of us. I don't know how it will go. I am not approaching it as a performance of power. I am approaching it the way my grandmother approached everything, with patience and with industrial economies. It was one of the finest pieces of student writing I had seen in 11 years of teaching. This was exceptional, I told her when I handed it back. She shrugged in the way that 17-year-olds shrug when something matters to them. My mom says money stuff is too complicated for high schoolers to understand. What do you think? I think the people who benefit from you not understanding it are the ones who say that. I looked at her for a moment. Exceptional thinking, I said. As always. She grinned and tucked the paper into her bag. I went home that afternoon through the city, on the bus I've always taken, past the streets I know, to the apartment that has always been entirely mine. I made tea in the kitchen in two of my grandmother's mismatched cups. I'd asked my father to retrieve the silver tea service from my mother, and he had, and now it sits on my sideboard where it belongs, and I sat at my table in the warm lamplight and thought about Frances Callahan and what she knew about me before I knew it about myself. You're not powerless, Nora. You never were. She was right. She was always right. And this time, I finally believed her. That's my story. If you've ever had to draw a line with someone you love, or if you're still finding the courage to do it, I see you. You're not alone. If this story meant something to you, subscribe to Whispers of Wisdom and turn on notifications. There are more stories like this one coming every week, stories about quiet strength, hard choices, and what happens when people finally stop apologizing for who they are. Thank you for being here. Take good care of yourself. Whispers of Wisdom.